Anyway, it's Adam Tracy, and I get a lot of questions regarding gaming and entering the Asian market. And as a general postulate, there's very little enforcement, well, next to none, with the rare exception of like Singapore, of offshore gaming accessing the Asian market, right? It's really just not like it doesn't really passport, but it doesn't really get enforced either, right? Which is terrible advice, but it's just the reality, right, of it. And when you're looking for a gaming license, which, conceptually would only add, in my mind, like some optic benefits, then you're really looking at the Philippines as really the only malleable and kind of like reasonably easy one to navigate and obtain. But it's not necessarily easy to navigate and obtain, right? And it, in a sense, follows what was the Curacao type sublicense scheme that they have had, depending on the day and the new legislation. But there's something called the Philippine Amortization Gaming and Amusement Corporation, right? And they're this quasi-government, quasi-private entity which basically processes the application, enforces the rules, and gives you the license, right? And, the application process isn't anything different in terms of documentation from what you would do in Isle of Man or Guernsey, Jersey, anything like that. But there are some particular, I guess, impediments, if you want to call it that make it unique. One, at least two founders, right, owners of the entity have to be Philippine, right? Now, they could be 5%, they could be 1%, but it will affect the net capital that you must show, which I'll come back to in a minute. Two, you have to have four distinct officers, right? Like separate people. A president, CEO, okay, who can be from anywhere. A secretary, which must be Philippine. A AML officer, which must be the Philippines. And a treasurer, which must be a person from the Philippines. So you have four people, three of which you're basically going to have to engage like on some salaried basis, no matter how much they do or don't do, right? And, that can be problematic depending on how you look at it, right? And expensive depending on the degree to which you want to find somebody who's capable of doing it. Now, to find, the Philippines generally is known as a great place for offshoring and outsourcing. So you can find persons who meet the fit and proper test who are relatively inexpensive to act as the treasurer, really just like a bookkeeper, who are skilled in, AML under Philippine law. And then the company secretary really is sort of like a toss-up. There's not much to really do. It's just sort of a standalone sort of thing, right? So you have the documentation, the standards for obtaining, or the capital requirements for obtaining the license will vary based on a number of factors, but generally speaking, you can expect for it to be 200,000 US. Now, there's exceptions that bring it down if you have like 50 employees and things like that, but for a startup, it's just not really realistic unless you're like porting, right, from somewhere else, and like you are willing to hire 50 employees, right? So you can look at the $200,000 proof of funds as just what it is, $200,000. Beyond getting the license, you then have like different administrative regions within the Philippines, and depending on like where you're going to be centered, Barangay being the most popular, you then have to go locally and basically provide evidence of not only the license, proof of incorporation, and also proof of your office, right? And then that local administrative office would approve what you've submitted to them, and you're effectively now able to conduct gaming licenses or gaming activities. So you go all the way down that path, and like the depending on what you want to do, right? Whether it's sports gaming, casino, whatever, the application fees range from 40 to 60,000 US. In addition to that, which to me is probably the most onerous element of that license, right, is that there is a $5,000 monthly fee due to your master licensee, right, PAGCOR. So on top of everything that you have to pay for, right, including employees, officers, office space, things of that nature, you can expect a minimum $5,000 like license fee, which the following year is paid at once in the sum of $35,000. So it gets reduced. But the whole point is, it's not the cheapest place. It's not the easiest place to get the license. Optically, is it preferred by gamblers in Asia? I don't know if the benefits outweigh the cost and the cost of administration, because, again, I go back to this, like you look at like the Hong Kong exchange, right? Their securities exchange. Literally every company, right? Or a strong majority of those companies are actually incorporated or domiciled in the Cayman Islands or BVI or Bermuda or places like that. So there is a definite affinity and comfortability with like the Caribbean. So if you think about it and said, well, okay, fine. Well, I have to like invest all this and manage all these people and go there and do all these things to get this license just so I'm technically in Asia, right? Which optically may provide some benefit, but the benefit isn't perhaps that great, because at the end of the day, I could get the license in Antigua, for instance, right? For a fraction of the cost, a massive reduction in the headache, and I really wouldn't see a significant drop off in terms of like player affinity, right? And again, like it's all brand building and doing what you say you'll do and quick payouts and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, are you really gaining anything significant? I think at a very core niche, right? Especially if you are going to offer games that are particularly acute and popular in Asia among Asian communities, yes, that may make sense, right? To the smaller players, but for like larger whales, sports, and especially like on the sports wagering side, I don't know if it's really, the benefit is greater than getting a license in the Caribbean, right? Now, you may not be able to go to Vanuatu and do the same thing, but there is this affinity, and you see like Chinese with the currency controls, things like that. Malaysia, the same way. Like they all want, accounts in the Caribbean. They all want investments in the Caribbean. So there's really a degree of like trust. So you don't necessarily have to go through it unless you really want to offer a very tailored and specific like game offering to the Asian community and a certain type of player within Asia, right? And again, there's really no issue with passporting because there's just no regulation in the lack thereof. So that is the Philippine gaming license. Hit me up with any questions, adam@adamtracy.io. I'll talk to you next time. Cheers.